So, you've just decided that this is the year that you are going to write and self publish your fiction book, but you're not really sure where to start or what all of the steps are. Then you are going to want to watch this video in entirety because I am going to walk you through the entire process and give insights into the 7 phases of writing and self publishing your novel with my very best tips for getting through them all. Look, I have been in your shoes before. Back when I was trying to write my very first novel, it felt like all of the tasks and steps were endless, and the action of publishing my novel was miles away. But I got through it, and I did it again and again. And now, 10 years later, I have helped countless authors write and self publish their own books. And throughout this time, I have learned how to streamline and systemize this process as much as possible in order to minimize that initial overwhelm of facing a fresh project head on. And I am going to share this process with you here today so that hopefully you are able to navigate the self publishing process with more confidence and ease, knowing the tips and strategies that I share with you here inside of this video. So go ahead and give this video a like if you are here today because you are working on your first or next book and you are ready to have a check-offable process to follow. Hi, I'm Britt from Thriving Scribes, and I help indie fiction authors build sustainable author careers. Now, if you are just getting started in your author career, the very first step is obviously going to be to publish your first book. And as I begin to walk through this process with you, you are literally going to get the stuff that you're going to need in order to begin mapping out your self publishing timeline with me in this video. And you can always come back and rewatch this video whenever you are ready to hit that next step in your self-publishing journey so that you can re-reference the tips and strategies that I'm sharing with you. Ready to get started? Here is my zero to published framework. This is the exact blueprint that guides authors from getting your initial book idea to completing the book development process and continuing on to publish and launch your book. It is broken up into 7 distinct phases to make the self-publishing process more manageable and actionable. Oh, and if you want to know how you can get your hands on this very same checklist, then definitely watch this video all the way throughout the end because at the very end, I will share how you can get your hands on it. So let's get into these and begin breaking these phases down. You may think that the very first step in self-publishing your book is to actually write the book, but you would be wrong. The prep phase is one of the most important things that you can do in order to increase the chances of success for your book. The goal of this phase is clarity, both within your book and for your author career as a whole, especially if this is the very first book you plan on releasing. So some of the things that you want to be considering in this prep phase are: what do you want your author career to actually look like? What genre or genres do you plan to write in? And how well are those genres performing within the market? How can you find that sweet spot between what you like to write, what you enjoy, and what is working well within the market so that your book will sell? Otherwise, since there is an overwhelming amount of tips, opinions, and options out there for self publishing, the entire process can begin to become a little overwhelming to face. Or worse, you'll end up spending so much time and energy writing and publishing a book that is not aligned with what you want for your career or that is not marketable. I talk a little bit more about this phase and the decisions you need to make in this video right here called 7 Things New Indie Authors Need to Know When Just Getting Started, which you can hop on over there and give it a watch to start getting your gears turning on some of these important prerequisite questions to self-publishing. Once you get through this step, then we can move on to actually planning your book project. And this phase is broken up into 2 separate stages: book development and purposeful plotting. The book development stage is a non-negotiable step for writing and publishing a book that sells because nobody wants to go through all of these phases and give all of this energy towards producing a book that nobody is going to buy. The first step here is market research. So, even if you are not planning to write to market, you need to spend some time in these initial phases on analyzing the current market and what is working within your genre. I am such a big believer that there is magic in the data. And you can learn so much about what books sell and why just through a little bit of research. The main things you really want to be looking for when it comes to market research are one, what are the best selling books within your genre or niche? Two, what patterns or commonalities are you finding within those best sellers? And three, what is it that is attracting readers to those books? What is catching those readers' eye? Are they utilizing certain themes, tropes, or character types? There are certainly other factors that you can look for throughout this process, but these are the basics. If you would like to see a video from me going through the market research process and how you can do that effectively, then type market research in the comments below so that I will know that you are looking forward to that video and I can make it for you. But if you skip this process entirely, you may end up writing and releasing a book that does not hit reader expectations and therefore does not begin growing a fan base for yourself. Because we as authors don't just want to attract one time readers, we want to build a pool of actively engaged brand fans who are waiting and will buy every single book that we release. That is one way that we as indie authors can begin to build that sustainable income through our writing. So, when you do this process, you are better equipped to hit those reader expectations. And now you can move on to creating your final story concept and breaking that down into a story arc and outline. You can think of your story arc as basically the journey that your character or characters take throughout your story. So basically, they start off at point A, they take some curves, hit some roadblocks, and end up at point B. If you are writing a series, you're going to want to make a story arc for your entire series as a whole, as well as individual story arcs for each book within that series. Something to note is that your story arc is what makes your book satisfying for your readers. Because nobody wants to read about somebody doing the same old thing day in and day out and nothing changes, right? Now, your story arc devices may be different depending on what genre you write in. For example, if you write romance, then you may need to include a romance arc. Or if you write fantasy, then you may use a story structure like the hero's journey to help you map out your story arc. Now, every writer's process is different, and many of us have a very strong stand on whether we are plotters, someone who maps out and plots their entire story up front, or pantsers, those who get the very general idea of what our story is going to look like and then kind of wing it from there, as well as those who fall in between those two different categories of writers. Personally, I'm a hardcore plotter, and I like to take the time after the initial outlining, but before the drafting phase, to actually break my outline down into scene blocking, where I will list for every single scene that's happening inside of my book the starting point, what's happening throughout that scene, and the ending point. This process helps me personally stay on track and make progress during the drafting phase. However, for some authors, this may feel too restricting and they may prefer to do more exploratory writing. And if that's the case, that is okay too. However, no matter what side of the plotter versus cancer camp that you claim, I highly recommend that before you dive into the drafting process, that you have a very clear idea on what your story structure is, what the important plot points are going to be along the way, as well as having those character development and world development details pinpointed. That way you can get through the drafting phase without hitting too many roadblocks. The final step in this phase is to map out your publishing timeline. So now that you have your project mapped out, you have your word count goals, it's time to decide how this project is actually going to fit into your year. When you are a self-publishing author, you have so much freedom. There is no boss telling you to get your butt in your chair. There is no agent waiting to hear back from you and seeing that you are getting your tasks done. And I find that when I do not set deadlines for my projects, that one of either two things happen. Either the project falls out of the priority range for me and I end up saying, oh, I'll get this done or fit it in when I can, or I get distracted by too many shiny objects along the way, and it ends up just stretching the project timeline so much longer than I initially planned or that it really needs to be. To combat this, you should set your goals early in the process so that you have something to refer back on to make sure that you are on track as you go throughout the process of self publishing. Things to consider here are your drafting deadline, your editing deadline, your publishing date, when you should hire editors or cover designers, and when you need those returned back to you, when you need those in your pocket to actually utilize them. So I actually have a publishing timeline calculator that I and my students inside of my membership, Authors on the Rise, use to help calculate this for us. You can plug in your ability and your availability as well as your project details, and it will generate a publishing timeline for you as well as giving you some recommended deadlines and due dates. So if you would rather not do all the math yourself and end up looking like this guy confused out of his mind, then you can head on over to thrivyscribes.com/publishing timeline to grab a copy for yourself and generate your book production timeline. I'll even share with you my recommendations on how long each phase of the zero to published blueprint should take. Finally, with your publishing timeline in hand, it's time to move on to writing your story. Now, in this phase, we are not editing. We are not critiquing our prose. We are simply writing to get our MVS or minimum viable story down on paper. Now, this sounds pretty straightforward, right? However, this is actually the step where most aspiring self-publishing authors get stuck. Here is a pretty staggering statistic for you. Of all of the people who start writing a book, 97% of them never finish it. Yikes, am I right? If you are here and watching this video, then I am pretty confident that you want to be part of that 3% that actually finishes their book. So here are my very best tips for getting through this phase and coming out on the other side. Number one, put in place some processes that help you stay focused as you work towards your goal. Now, I have recorded and released an entire video all about staying focused and the different ways that you can help yourself do this and the different things you can put in place that aid in your focus. So definitely go and watch that if you need some inspiration. Another thing here is to find an encouraging community. Now, writing can often feel like a solitary practice, and it can be if you prefer it to be that way. However, I find that by simply being with and connecting with others who are working towards a similar goal allows me to have more focus and also kind of lift me up when I might be feeling down or discouraged. There are many places to find writing communities, both online and in person, but really having that social accountability can absolutely make a difference when it comes to staying focused and keeping that momentum when you are drafting. Something that I've done inside of my membership, Authors on the Rise, is actually host weekly group writing sprints where we all come together in the same room and actively work towards our word count goals together for a specific period of time. And that is one of my favorite ways that I am able to help support authors during this drafting phase. Finally, it's good to know that there are no rules when it comes to drafting your novel. You do not have to write your book in order if you don't feel like it. If you are really excited to write a scene that happens somewhere in the middle or the end, and being able to jump straight to that one is going to help you get the words out, then do that. If you are maybe a little fuzzy on a specific chapter or scene and you're still not really clear on the details, then maybe you can write that out in like a skeleton outline and just add in the pieces of dialogue that you know are going to happen somewhere within that chapter. That's okay to do as well. The important thing is that you just get it done. Phase 4 is revising your draft. So once you have that first draft written and the words are down on paper, you are going to need to go through the process of editing your draft. Listen, the first draft material are not the material that you are going to be releasing to the world for your readers. There is absolutely no excuse for publishing unedited work. Woo! Now that I've got that out of the way, let me elaborate by saying that the amount of editing a project is going to need is going to be dependent on the project itself, the author's skill level, and the resources available to that author. So let's briefly touch on each one of these types of editing. The first is self-editing, where the author themselves is going through the manuscript, trimming out anything that is unnecessary, filling in any gaps that they find, and making sure that the plot makes sense and the prose is readable. The next step is workshopping, and this may or may not include another person or set of people, for example, a critique partner or a group of beta readers. But the goal here is to get another set of eyeballs on your book and give you some important feedback. Now, there are different types of software out there that you can use to critique your work, like AutoCrit. However, those software and system and tools out there will not give you the same quality of feedback or as much value as another human would going through your work for you. The final goal of workshopping is to get your manuscript as clean as possible for publication or for whenever you are ready to send it off to professional editing. When it comes to professional editing, again, there are many different types that you can pursue. And again, this comes down to really assessing what your individual needs are and what resources are available for you to put towards editors. Generally, the type of editors you need will break down into a few different categories. So there are developmental editors that actually help you with the big picture, the scope of your novel as a whole, looking for plot holes or any type of part in your novel that maybe doesn't make sense. Plot development, character development, world building, story arc, those types of things. Line or copy editors help you with your word choice, sentence structure, prose, and proofreaders focus mainly on catching grammar or formatting issues. Okay, so we are getting close to the finish line here. The next phase is broken down into 3 stages: packaging, promotion, and publication. The 3 Ps. The way you package your book is crucial to the success of your book launch and marketing efforts. If your packaging does not attract your ideal reader, you are simply not going to make any sales. Now, just like when we were plotting our book, this is another time to refer back on to that market research that you did in the previous phase. So here you can look at what covers are working, what title and series title styles are you seeing? How are the blurbs being structured? You can use this information to help you hit those reader expectations, signal the right readers for your book, and hook them in. You will also need to have your cover designed by a professional designer who is knowledgeable in your market because it is such an important piece of the reader's buying decision. Finally, here it's time to format your book and gather that important metadata information like title, subtitle, author data, blurb, ISBN. Now, when it comes to actually formatting your novel, you can do this yourself or hire it out. Today, there are actually many different software out there available to self-publishing authors that help simplify this process for us and make it more doable as the author itself, like Reedsy and Atticus. Over on the promotion side, you need to be creating a publishing strategy. Having a successful book launch, and making sales is so much more than simply uploading your book and hitting the publish button. You'll need to finalize your release date, decide how big this book launch is going to be, choose which marketing avenues you are going to pursue, and begin scheduling things in. Things to think about, for example, are you going to be using an ARC team to get reviews? Are you going to be utilizing any paid promotion or advertising platforms? What are you going to be pricing your book at? And what is your launch budget? Will you do a pre order or hold a giveaway? There are so many things that you could do that it's important to figure out what your launch priorities are and begin scheduling those in ahead of time. Finally, it's time to publish and sell your book. If you have not done so already, this is the last chance to choose which publishing avenue you are going to pursue. Of course, your publishing strategy can change and morph as time goes on, but for this initial launch, where will you be publishing? Will you stay platform exclusive? For example, utilizing Amazon KDP, which grants you extra perks for staying exclusive to their platform, or will you publish wide and make your book readily available on multiple platforms? If you do decide to go with the latter, then you're going to need to make sure that you have chosen a print on demand publisher that does make your books available to outside retailers like Ingram Spark, Draft to Digital, and others out there like those. Another thing to consider is, will you be selling direct? AKA, will your readers be able to buy your book directly from you on your platform or website? And if so, what tech and tools you need to put in place in order to make that happen? The actual act of publishing your novel is pretty simple. You take your completed manuscript file, your cover file, and upload it all onto the platform of your choice, along with the metadata that you collected earlier. You schedule the date for release, and you're done. Now that you've got all of that set up, it is time to launch your book. Keep in mind that your job is not done once the book is published. When you enter this launch phase, it's when you are actually making that shift from creation into marketer. Sell, sell, sell. You want your book to reach as many readers as possible, and hopefully, throughout the work that you've done through all of the previous phases, you're going to begin to see really good results. Think of a launch as a big marketing push to kick your book off on the right foot. Get that initial burst of visibility and influx of sales so that you can begin building that baseline of readers and social proof via buzz and reviews that are going to help your book's success over its lifetime. And if you can make back what you've already invested into your book or make a little bit of profit, that is a huge bonus too. If you've made it this far, it is time to celebrate. Give yourself a huge pat on the back and make sure that you've put some self care activities in place to help get you through this time, which can often feel like a roller coaster of emotions. Whatever the results of your launch are, remember this. You are within that top 3% of people who started their book and actually went on to finish it and publish it to the world. That is huge. And this is definitely something to be proud of. Now, the absolute worst thing that you can do is go through this entire process of writing and publishing your book and then never mention it or market it again. You want to be making consistent book sales month after month. And so, in order to do that, phase 6 is all about putting in place some evergreen marketing systems. Now, this marketing phase isn't as intensive as your book launch phase was. However, it is just as important, if not more important, to the success of your author career. As a modern day author in the world today, it is essential that you are building a book marketing ecosystem and reader journey in a way that helps you reach your goals. Now, every author's marketing system is going to look different. There are so many different things or ingredients that you can put together to create your individualized marketing plan. For example, there is a website and email marketing. You can build a book funnel. You can do social media marketing. You can do press ops, collaboration, content marketing, running occasional sales and promotions, doing events. All of these are different ingredients that you can use to create your own evergreen marketing strategy. But the important thing is to decide what that is going to look like for you. Make that plan and begin executing it. The final phase of self publishing your book is book two and beyond. Now, feel free to take a break after launching your initial book in order to take some time to rest, rejuvenate, refill that creative well, build out those evergreen marketing systems and your author platform. But you'll also want to begin considering what comes next. If the next book is book two in the series, then it's going to be time to hop back into the writing and plotting phases and continue on the book development process with book two. Or if this is a brand new book, not related to the first one, then you may need to start all the way back in phase one and continue down the zero to published blueprint for that project. But this time, you are going to be a whole lot more knowledgeable on what works for you in the self publishing, in the book development process, and what doesn't. And you can begin shifting and tweaking things from using what you learned the first go round, which hopefully will lead to a much smoother process for book two and any books that come afterwards. Self publishing is a process that over the length of your career, you're going to begin tuning and tweaking to make it work better for you and the way that you function. I know this process, the first time you go through it, may seem really difficult, or you may have questions pop up here and there as you go through it. So if you have any questions at all, definitely drop them in the comments and I will do my best to help you work through them. And if you are an author who loved this video and you want even more support along your self-publishing journey, then I am excited to announce that my membership, Authors on the Rise, is officially open for registration. Authors on the Rise is a low-cost membership for fiction authors, guiding them through the entire zero to published framework. Yes, the exact blueprint that I walked you through today. Inside of the membership, we deep dive into every single step along the way of planning, writing, and publishing your marketable fiction book, along with giving you the guides and templates to make the process even easier. And I've even thrown in some special accountability and support features as well. That way, you aren't going through this process alone. If you are interested and you want to learn more, just head on over to authorsontherise.com to get all of the details and join us inside. This is the first video in a playlist I'm creating all about self-publishing 101. I've got more coming, so definitely click the playlist that you see on your screen right now if you want even more guidance throughout the self-publishing process.